All right, Kevin, long time in the making. We finally get to do this. And for all the people out there, this is like a dream come true because you get a chance to be with a healer. That's the way I describe you, Kevin, as a healer. And I'm going to try to go ahead during our conversation. As you and I met, you fascinated me with your philosophies and your ways of looking at the world and looking at health. And I'm going to try to extract some of those so that everybody can understand how you can change your life through nutrition, but mainly through the inner part of the body, trusting science, through the research, and encompassing all those things to try to go ahead and bring health to the world. Because the one thing that I've gotten to know, Kevin, on is the fact that you want to help people. And that's your main quest in life. And Kevin, this is going to be fun because we're going to get to talk about all the things you and I have talked about over the years. And this is an association that's gone over 10 years now. And I'm going to start off and preface it by starting out with a philosophy that you share and got my attention right off the bat. And that is that in order for there to be healing, the body has to be involved in 50% of it. Elaborate on that for me.
Well, Benny, and first of all, it's an honor to be with you. And, I'm really excited about what we're doing to bring this information to the world. So to address your question, when we look at medicine, or at least I look at medicine, many times or most often, allopathic medicine or Western medicine as we recognize it, and to some degree integrative medicine like naturopaths and acupuncturists, generally don't calculate the formulation A plus B equals C, A being the formulation, B equals the body, and then, or A plus B, the body, the formulation equals C, the outcome. Many times it's just A equals C, which, as you can see, the variables means that we will have a fault, a probability of a fault with the outcome. So to address your question, A, the formulation or the protocol plus the body equals the outcome. And when I design processes, even when I'm treating my patients, I have to look at the body as 50% of the protocol. So as an example, I can't stamp on my formulations, the body is 50% of the ingredient. What we have to do is understand that when we put a formulation together, that's 50%, but it has to be calculated to parallel what your body, the enzymes, the amino groups, so on and so forth, all have to be calculated. So once 50% of the formulation that you ingest or take is introduced into your system, 50% is added to that, and that equals 100% of the outcome. And the difficulty that I'm personally seeing in a lot of medicine today or healthcare is it doesn't calculate the body, and therefore we override the situation. Hence, we have all these contraindications when people take prescription drugs and even supplementation. And this is what's important, Benny, is that supplementations can often do the same thing if the formulation is not set in the same process of understanding that your body is 50% of that calculation to produce the income.
Now, it's one thing to have people that have thoughts, research, beliefs, and they convey those things to it. But the thing that attracted me to you was, again, I'm an NFL announcer for CBS, and I remember the playoff game, Pittsburgh Steelers against the Denver Broncos. The Broncos had a quarterback that was drafted in the first round, much to a lot of people's surprise, in Tim Tebow. And in his second, he throws this 80-yard touchdown pass in the overtime to Demaryius Thomas. They beat Pittsburgh. Tremendous upset, okay? But then nobody explains the journey that brought Demaryius Thomas before the big picture. And that's where Kevin Meehan comes in. Because now we're talking about a guy that, he had an injury, and you come up with a way to go ahead and treat that within the body. He gets that treatment on Thursday, and then the old saying, the proof is in the pudding. Sunday, he catches an 80-yard touchdown pass. And that, to me, is what really caught my attention to your particular ways of doing things. And I thought, wow, you know, there's something that it's an instant, and it's obviously well thought out. It was well, you know, the whole planning, all that stuff, and the confidence that Demarius had to go out there and play that game and catch an 80-yard touchdown pass in the overtime to win the game. I mean, everybody dreams of that. But now he's got a sound body to be able to do that, thanks to the body, like you said, healing and being involved in 50% of that healing.
And Benny, I think to your point, that's very important, that is what we want to bring to the world, to say, listen, we can have a new approach, or an approach that is really, it's not new, it's science. So to your point about Demarius, it's not a surprise that he was able to do what he did, in my opinion, because of this idea and this calculation that you brought up. Understanding the process of the body, understanding everything from pH to how cartilage regenerates, collagen regenerates. The whole process is vitally important to understand. And often, as you probably know, and many others, it's like a stone skipping over water. It never goes deep. We can only touch the surface in many cases, and this is why we have, in my personal opinion, a disappointing outcome with a lot of protocols in healthcare, is because it skips on the water. It doesn't go deep, if that makes sense.
Totally. But see, Kevin, you were so far ahead of your time, because now, I mean, I saw this situation, Ryan Jensen, all-pro center for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All of a sudden, I read this article, and it just caught my attention like you wouldn't believe. Here is a renowned orthopedic surgeon. Ryan suffers a second day of training camp. A guy falls on his leg, torn ACL, PCL, MCL. There's no L's left in his knee. He damaged them all. This doctor says, I'm no longer doing surgery, and I wouldn't recommend surgery. So using those methods, by letting the body in on the healing, Ryan Jensen is able to play what they thought was a career-ending injury. He's able to play, you know, the wild card game that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers played in, and was able to play and function like nothing ever happened to him.
And you bring up a very pertinent point, in my opinion, is a physician who is renowned comes to a synopsis at the end of his career to say, hey, maybe there is another way. And this is what intrigues me, is his experience, the physician that you're talking about, who I'm not really aware of, I'll look it up, but it took that long for him to understand, it's like decibels in sound, to understand, listen, there's a way to amplify the healing process. And he came to that conclusion. There's another very famous surgeon who came from, I believe it was Chicago Medical University, who did spinal surgeries, 3, 4, sometimes a day, from epidurals to, laminectomies, discectomies. He came to the conclusion, he's now in Seattle, I believe. He said, I'm not going to do them anymore because I'm convinced this isn't the way of taking care of spinal surgeries. He has more success, from what I've heard now, in practice without doing surgeries than previous to where and this guy was, he taught and everything else. This is his dialogue. So now, Benny, to your point, what have we reached right now in medicine? What have we reached in education? Are we beginning to understand, are we getting to the parameter of saying there's another way of achieving status in medicine that can be beneficial or more beneficial to the patient than what we've been doing in the past, to your point?
But along that line, though, Kevin, it seems like now, along with that doctor, it seems like this doctor did something that's rather uncommon, and that is take an interest in the subject before him and how to get him well and to find the best way to get him well. And now that's based upon his research that he's now able to do, because now he doesn't have the constraint of the previous description of his job to predominantly do surgery.
Very good point. And this is where, to me, Benny, science comes into play. Science is, we look at a periodic table, 92 elements. That doesn't change. That's world-renowned You go to Switzerland, you go to, Saudi Arabia, you go to America, Canada, it still recognizes 92 elements in the periodic table. That does not change. And that's the basis of how I look at medicine. If we define the universe and we define health, we define your body, it's reduced to 3 simple basic particles: electron, proton, and neutron. When we build that up, these make atoms, these make compounds. It's basically saying, okay, let's unravel this a little bit and see the dynamic. And this is from everything from enzymes, which are catalysts to create a situation metabolically so you do what you do and you live the way you do. And that's the way I look at medicine, is to say, let's break this down to science. No more of the stones skipping over the water. Let's get deep into this. And that's why we saw the outcome with Demarius. That's why we're seeing the outcome with people that have been receiving the same procedure that he has, and they're going, my physician told me I was going to have a hip replacement or a knee replacement. What has happened? The x-rays and the images are showing different. It's nothing special. It's science. And that's what I like to do, is reduce it and get back down to the basement, the platform that holds the whole structure into place.
And see, that's what the human mind can conceive and then pull off. Again, understanding science. I mean, the human brain, it's estimated, has a 2.5 petabytes.
Yeah.
Right? And 1 petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. 1 terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes. So to fit all that into a 16 gigabyte pen, you would need 155 of those gigabyte pen to fit the 10 billion neurons that the human brain has. And that sounds powerful, doesn't it?
It does.
But my wife can hack it in 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, and that's kind of science. But the thing is, as we evolve and we start finding things, and that's why I want to get into this part of it. It's one thing to be saying all this stuff. And again, you're throwing out scientific thing. But again, let's get back to the proof is in the pudding. And if you go back and talk about your life, I mean, we're talking about the man who sits before me with all this scientific information, with all this records upon records of accomplishment that you've set forth and that you've accomplished. We're talking about a guy who at one time was homeless, was an orphan, was a diabetic, and look at you now.
To that point, the emphasis of why I wrote the book, Fallen Peppercorns, which is a summary of that time in my life, is that we can achieve if we really want to. And the expression that I'm not any more special than anyone else, and that's what I want to showcase here. To be able to do that and to get through, the rape and the molestation and the heroin addiction and everything else, is to summarize, to say, listen, if we really want to achieve these potentials, we can. And I want to showcase, Benny, that I, who's sitting before you, who's honored to be sitting here with you, is really just the common person. And that common person who was able to achieve because of the desire to achieve and what we're capable of doing. Just look at what you've done in your life and what you've achieved and what I've been able to achieve. And I feel we're just beginning to clear our throats, that we're looking to achieve so much more. And the voice of being able to say, listen, if you don't want to, you don't have to. If you don't want to be sick, there are options for us to get through those. And it's being able to get us on the roadway and the pathway to those correct options. And Benny, the part that frustrates me, as it might frustrate you, is all of this dialogue we see on the internet and all this dialogue that we hear about this hopelessness. Once you have this, you're done. And that's the part that is frustrating for me. It more or less parallels my childhood of what I went through, of to say, no, it's not hopeless. We have the opportunity to get through this if we really want to, and if we have the correct source to do that. And My message to the world is to say, listen, there are opportunities to understand of our potentiality, and particularly with what you and I are talking about now with health. If you have an injured leg and you're told you need a knee replacement, let's look at other options that give you the opportunity to say you might not need that knee replacement.
Now, here's the thing that I find fascinating with all this, because I know, I mean, in your particular case, failure was not an option. You were going to go and accomplish what you wanted to do. You set about doing it, and you did it. Mm-hmm. But so many times, part of that, to me, the internet's confusion. Mm-hmm. Because it seems like, the more confusion they create on that, there's doubts about this and about that. But again, let's get back to the thing that jumps out at. Mm-hmm. A person can change their health. I know a lot of times everybody, doctors say, well, they'll ask you the question like, is there breast cancer in your family, or is there diabetes in your family? But again, I want you to talk about that, how you change. I mean, you were beset by diabetes, mm-hmm. but yet you were able to change. Oftentimes you hear people come back with stats to say, okay, it's genes. Mm-hmm. You're destined. Mm-hmm. But is that really a reality? I mean, if you look at people from Japan, men from Japan have, I think, like a 3% prostate cancer. Mm-hmm. But yet you take those guys and you bring them to the United States, feed them the diet we have here, and what happens? Mm-hmm. I think that jumps up to like 97%. I'm just making up numbers, but in essence, that's what it does. Uh-huh. But talk about that, even though the gene is actually influenced by the way your family has lived their life. Mm-hmm. Their nutrition, their habits, those have all been stuff that's been ingrained in them, and therefore the gene is they're probably going to get that ailment because of the diet and the way they live their life. Would mm-hmm. that be true?
Well, that's a very good point. And my analogy to that is this. There's predispositions. And I give an analogy to my patients or people that I talk to if I'm giving a lecture. If we're driving down a road and there's a bridge that we're coming upon, and the bridge says weight limit 10 tons. As long as that vehicle is 10 tons or under, that bridge will take as much traffic as long as we could take 50, 100 years, the infrastructure. If that bridge says weight limit 8 tons, as long as you're under 8 tons, that's fine. The reason I bring this up is there's predispositions to your question. We're going to live fine, even if we have a history of cancer, breast cancer, if we have a history of diabetes, as long as we understand our lifestyles should be in that 8-ton limit. So we're not going to go out and drink. The person that can go out and drink at bars is driving over that bridge, it's 10 tons. They can handle a little more. It's all predisposition. And that's what the process is about, is to say, listen, because you're fair skin, your ability to be out in the sun for the same amount of time that someone who's African American is less. But that doesn't mean you can't take sun. Do you see where I'm coming
Sure.
from? It's all predisposition. And this is where the educational process comes in, to say, listen, you can eat this. You can live this way, as long as you understand the ability to stay in that range.
There is a way. There is a way to change your present health conditions. And how do you find those answers? Well, that's one of the things, that this is the man that's going to be the source for those things. And it's not just going to be his knowledge, but he's also going to direct you to different places, publications, books, things like that, where you can get that information. And it is the information that is viable, it's truthful, and it's scientific. Mm-hmm. So we're not relying on any kind of things, outer type of things, but just the basic science. Following science and letting science take its course and understanding we only get one temple. And this is it.
Exactly.
And for as whatever dilapidated my temple may be, this is all I got. So I got to make the most of it. And and that's what it's all about. So that's what we're going to try to do with these webinars. This is try to give you those answers. And again, the proof is in the pudding. He's lived it. And I mean, I'm a burnt out field goal kicker, average in every sense of the word, but there's different things that you can use to get yourself that success. And that's a great thing, that, failure is not an option. The avoidance of failure is not the same as the pursuit of success. You got to go after it. And that's what we're going to go ahead and try to find out. And again, our quest is your health, our interest in you guys. And again, you got to remember his philosophy. The body has to be involved in 50% of the healing or it doesn't work.
That's it. That's the
All right,
equation.
Kevin.
Good, Benny. Thanks.